watching this, even if you're watching it on playback. I really don't want to be standing here today. I can't even begin to imagine what the family of Olivia Flores and her friends are going through today. I want to say that I half expected, and I'm going to flip the camera around here. I wanted to say that I half expected that there would be memorial signs out here. But as you can see, there's a lot of road construction blockages going on. So I'm just going to walk the length of this area real quick. Strangely enough, the weather right now is a little cooler than it was this time last year. But it's a bright, sunny day. And it was a bright, sunny day last year when Olivia and her friends set out for their day. And we all know how that ended. So I wanted to get closer to the main drag, but traffic is really heavy and really noisy. So we're doing this instead. So 1 year ago today, in the early evening, Olivia and her friends headed over from Owatonna, Minnesota to Rochester to come to Apache Mall. And they were going to do some pre-graduation, pre-summer shopping and just have fun like teens like to do. And they ended up approaching that intersection right there. And turning at that set of lights when Minnesota State Patrol Trooper Shane Roper, doing better than 80 miles an hour without lights or siren, without any indication that he was responding to an emergency or an active pursuit of somebody committing some heinous crime, some heinous act of criminality. But reportedly was responding to somebody that he suspected had been speeding earlier. Decided that he was going to violate Minnesota State Statute 169.17 and travel down this road. And that's why I'm focusing on the road. Travel down that road that you see right there with the posted speed limit of 30 miles an hour. He decided he was going to travel down that road at more than double the posted speed limit in pursuit of somebody who hadn't violated the law. He had this individual, this suspected, I would tell you probably made up individual, this individual had merely violated a traffic code, not a criminal code, a traffic code, which is a civil infraction. Trooper Roper did with malice and contempt for his fellow human beings gave chase to a phantom vehicle that no one could see, that no one knew anything about other than him, and the ride-along that he had with him that day to show off. Blew through this intersection, striking the vehicle that Olivia and her friends were in. And it ended up including that vehicle as well as the vehicle of another individual on scene. And it resulted in injuries to everybody involved, to include Trooper Roper's ride-along. Now, as soon as the story broke, as soon as the media was talking about it, I predicted everything that would happen. I predicted that it would get brushed under the rug for months on end, weeks on end, which it did, because the thin blue line, the blue wall of silence, quickly descends and forms ranks around itself. It immediately begins to run cover for anybody in uniform that ends up causing a loss of life or severe bodily harm to anybody else other than other law enforcement. We see this play out constantly. And so the Minnesota State Patrol couldn't investigate itself. I mean, we know that law enforcement agencies do investigate themselves frequently, but in this situation, and there was no way they were going to be able to investigate themselves. So the Rochester, Minnesota Police Department stepped in and they began the investigation that lasted for months and ultimately did end up turning over the results of their investigation to the Olmsted County Attorney at the time, Mark Ostrom, who then did make the decision to pursue charges against Trooper Shane Roper. The issue is not that he was charged. The issue is how long this is drug out. And behind that, deeper into that story, is the history of Trooper Shane Roper, which I had the facts on weeks before the news media, before the mainstream media, before the Rochester Police Department, before the Olmsted County Attorney's Office, before any of them were willing to talk about it. I had been working behind the scenes to get the information. I heard from a family member of Trooper Roper that this was not his first incident of criminal negligence behind the wheel. He had, at least on 3 other occasions, not only wrecked his own squad, but wrecked the squad of another trooper in responding to an incident that he really didn't have any business being involved in. He just down the road from, like literally down the road from here, off in that direction, right on the other side of the mall here, he ran his vehicle into the shred cables. Call them the shredders. The cables you'll see at exits, exit ramps and whatnot at cloverleafs to keep people from going over embankments. He was driving at such an asinine rate of speed with so little control of his vehicle that he shredded his vehicle on the cables just down the road from the scene where he killed Olivia Flores. He was driving at a negligent criminal speed on icy highways when he pretty much totaled his vehicle hitting a deer. Now, that could happen to anybody, but he has this track record. Trooper Roper, the Minnesota State Patrol, has this track record through him of letting him do whatever he wants to do. He got a little slap on the wrist and remedial training and got put back out on the roads right away. And because he was so protected, because they had done little to nothing about him, he felt comfortable 1 year ago today doing 80 miles an hour or more on this road. Just let that sink in. The GPS of his vehicle shows that on this section of highway, Trooper Roper was doing, not highways, surface roads, 84 miles an hour, folks, 84 miles an hour in here. Coming through this intersection, to make contact with the vehicle that was turning, that Olivia Flores had just happened to be in that day. Let that, just think about that for a minute. He would have been doing better than 84 miles an hour if at the last seconds he hadn't tapped his brakes and slowed down some. And it makes one wonder how many more people would have died. Now, so not only does Colonel Blagojevich, who is now the commander of the Minnesota State Patrol, she is the commandant of the Minnesota State Patrol, the entire state. She had been Trooper Roper's commanding officer before her promotion to State Patrol commander, colonel. She had been directly in command of the barracks here in the Rochester area where Roper was assigned and working out of, and was responsible for overseeing what should have been disciplinary actions that were far more severe than they were. Blagojevich, who's now the colonel in command of the entire state patrol, gave him tiny little slaps on the wrist and put him back out on the road. Now, you think that this would just be, something that happens in a vacuum. And so maybe it was a one-off that Roper didn't, have, backing or support, and that somehow Trooper Roper, I can't see. Sunglasses are blocking everybody, what people are saying. Yeah, blue line. You would think that Roper would be that one-off, right? That we'd be able to say that. But what we know now is not only is Roper not a one-off, but while under the command of Blagojevich, the Minnesota State Patrol now has another trooper, Moser, in Sherburne County, just a little over a month ago, driving in the same manner, driving in the same way, damn near killed 2 teenage boys, Blake and Braxton Mostad, on April 9th of 2025. He now sits out on paid administrative leave while Sherburne County drags their feet in this investigation. See, this corner, this intersection, this is the intersection of injustice. This is the intersection of the thin blue line. This is where, this intersection right here, this is where we began to see the Minnesota State Patrol unravel itself, in the sense that they can't cover it up anymore. They can no longer say that their troopers are out there for safety. They can no longer say that their troopers are out there protecting people from dangerous criminals on the roads and on the highways and the freeways and the interstates of Minnesota. This intersection proves, the death of Olivia Flores proves, that the Minnesota State Patrol is far more dangerous to the people of Minnesota than they are a help to the people of Minnesota. I have hours of commentary from people. I have video after video after video. I have numerous people reporting to me. I wish I had a dash cam so I could tell you about the trooper that I saw the other day. I saw the trooper that was tailgating me, the trooper that was doing 80 in a 55. See, Minnesota State Patrol murdered Olivia Flores here last year on this day. It wasn't just Trooper Shane Roper that murdered Olivia Flores. It was the entire Minnesota State Patrol. It was every single trooper in Minnesota is responsible for the death of Olivia Flores. Every single one of them. They're all responsible for the cover-up. Every single trooper in the state of Minnesota is now responsible for the accident that damn near killed Blake Mostad in Sherburne County, because you had to have another trooper driving in the exact same way as Trooper Shane Roper. We just came off of the Law Enforcement Memorial Week, where we saw law enforcement around the country, but especially here in the state of Minnesota, applaud themselves and give themselves a pat on the back and talk about how they're out there helping and how that thin blue line is out there protecting. We had memorial after memorial after memorial across the state of Minnesota alone. Right here in Rochester, Minnesota, we had a memorial service where they applaud all these men and women who have given their lives in the line of duty. And not one of them mentioned the victims. And I'm not talking about criminals, folks. I'm not talking about people who pull a firearm on a trooper. I'm not talking about people who get into a life or death struggle with a trooper or a cop. I'm talking about victims, innocent victims, people just going about their business. 1 year ago today, Olivia Flores in that vehicle did not approach this intersection and turn in front of a trooper who was conducting himself in the line of duty. He's trying to justify his actions by saying that what he did, he was doing for the people of Minnesota, while he was violating the very laws that dictate that he cannot drive the way he was driving. And now Trooper Roper's defense team, and Trooper Roper's entitled to his defense. I'm not going to argue that he shouldn't be able to defend himself. He has a right to defend himself. But what Trooper Roper is doing, and yes, folks, I keep saying Trooper Roper because I want it to stick. He was a trooper when he murdered Olivia Flores on this day, last year, 1 year ago today. Trooper Roper was a trooper then, and he will remain a trooper as long as this case goes unadjudicated. I don't care if they fired him. He is still a trooper because what he did, he killed someone while he was a trooper, and he will forever be the trooper who murdered Olivia Flores. Trooper Roper, in his defense, is now blaming the victims. Never mind, he wasn't running lights. Minnesota Code 169.17, and I'm paraphrasing, says that troopers, law enforcement officials especially, first responders, emergency vehicles, when responding to an accident, violating any traffic codes while in the course of their duties, must run lights and sirens. Roper was doing none of that. He didn't have front lights activated. He didn't have rear lights activated. He wasn't running sirens. He was just running 84 miles an hour down this road into this intersection when he killed Olivia Flores. And now he's blaming the victims. The pursuit of the truth in this case is so it's mishandled by the media, it's been mishandled by law enforcement, it's been mishandled by the courts. He's not done a day in jail for any of this. He didn't even have to go to court for the first time until November of 2024. May 18th, 2024, he kills Olivia Flores. His first court appearance was in November. On that day, Judge Krista Daly, some of you were watching. I see, Cliff from the Vigilance Committee. He was watching the day that I went to that court case. Roper goes to court in November after killing Olivia on May 18th of 2024. He goes to court and Judge Krista Daly pleads not guilty for him and then lets him go without a bond. Basically a signature bond. He just gives his word that he's not going to commit any more crimes and that he's not going to bother the families and that he won't drive a vehicle. Doesn't order him to be booked in, doesn't order him to get a mugshot, doesn't order him to get fingerprints, doesn't order him to have to go through the booking process, doesn't order any of that, lets him get up and walk out of the courtroom. If that had been anybody else, not only would we not have gone from May 18th of 2024 to November of 2024 without being booked in, without having a mugshot, without having fingerprints, we would have spent time in jail. We would have had more than just a signature bond. And so I reported from the courthouse, outside the courthouse, I reported. What I also reported prior was the mishandling of this situation. I'm the one who told the public about Roper's driving habits, about his discipline history. I broke that story before the regular media did. I broke that story before the county attorney and the Rochester Police Department had anything to say about it. I was the one who had to point out that not only did Judge Krista Daly not treat Roper the same way that she would have treated anybody else, I pointed it out before the county attorney had anything to say about it. And so, what did the district courts do? What did Olmsted County courts do? Did they immediately order somebody to go out and retrieve Roper? No. Judge Haney covered for Judge Daly and said, oh, Judge Daly inadvertently forgot to order Roper to book in, so we're gonna give him 2 weeks to get this done. Folks, this is the reality that we live in. I don't care if you're a Trump supporting, back the blue at all costs kind of individual. I don't care if you're a hard left, I hate all cops person. I don't care if you're an ACAB. This is not an issue of left versus right. This isn't an issue of red versus blue. This isn't an issue of Republican versus Democrat. This is an issue of the fact that there is a two-tier justice system in the United States. There is a two-tier justice system in the state of Minnesota where cops, servants, and others get handed special treatment. They get treated with kid gloves. They don't get treated the same way the rest of us do. They get to blame the victims and say, well, I was just doing my job and they turned in front of me. They get to argue and make their case, which I guess he's entitled to do. The Trooper Roper's entitled to make his case constitutionally. I have no problem with that aspect. But he gets to say that my prior bad acts have no impact on this bad act. And by the way, this isn't a bad act because it's not my fault. It's the fault of the victim. If Olivia Flores hadn't been in that car, and if her friend hadn't been driving, and if her friend would have been paying attention and wouldn't have turned when she did, if her friend would have realized that I was doing 84 miles an hour without lights and sirens, but I was clearly doing it because I'm doing my job, then she wouldn't have turned in front of me, and there would have been no accident, and Olivia would be here today. That's what his argument is, folks. Nobody else gets to make that argument. You cause that accident, you come to this intersection, and you kill somebody, and you tell me how that happens. You go blowing through this intersection like these cars that are going by right now. I mean, 84 miles an hour in this intersection, and you kill somebody? Where would you have been at the end of that day? If you were a trooper in Sherburne County, if you were Trooper Moser in Sherburne County, and you were going so fast as you came across an accident that you were sent to go look for the wrong way driver who caused the accident, and the young man had time to look up, Braxton had time to look up and look at his brother Blake and go, the cops are here, he's going too fast, he's not going to have time to stop. See, folks, cops don't learn lessons. Law enforcement doesn't learn from these incidents. Well, I take that back. Law enforcement does learn. They learn that they can do whatever they want. Law enforcement has learned that the rules don't apply to them. Law enforcement has learned that at the end of the day, they can slaughter an innocent young 18-year-old girl weeks away from her graduation, weeks away from starting her adult life, weeks away from launching off into what should have been a long life. And they learn, I've got a year plus of my freedom ahead of me. And that has given the Minnesota State Patrol more than enough time to run cover, to cut ties with Roper, and pretend like nothing happened. It's given them a year to hold memorial services for fallen troopers across the state of Minnesota and other fallen law enforcement across the state of Minnesota. It's given them a year to stand on the top of Dunkin' Donuts and have cop on a rooftop events, to continue to propagandize the public and say, look at us, we're just like you, but we're not like you, but we're just like you. See, the law enforcement world is not just like you. Like they refer to you as a civilian, and they refer to themselves as not civilians. You're the dirty, scuzzy, even if you've never committed a crime in your life, you're the dirt balls, you're the scuzz balls, you're the people in the traffic stop, on the traffic stop, you're the people who need to be managed, you're the people who they have to be afraid of when they approach your car, because everything's about officer safety. Case after case after case after case after case, over and over and over again. In the courts and the system, other cops protect them. Olivia's family had to hire an attorney to just get the Rochester Police Department under Chief Jim Franklin to even talk to them during the investigation. They had to pay out of their own pockets for an attorney to approach them and talk about the situation from under the threat of a civil lawsuit. Do you understand that? The victims had to hire an attorney to get the cops to talk to them about the case they were investigating for their slaughtered daughter. If a cop gets killed in the line of duty, everybody descends on those family members, on the wife or the husband and the kids and the mothers and the fathers and the grandkids. It descends on them to comfort them and support them and aid them, to give them information, to let them know where the investigation is, to let them know if they found the victim or the perpetrator, to let them know what it's going to look like going forward. But Olivia's family had to hire an attorney to get anything from the Rochester, Minnesota Police Department, to get anything from the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office by way of communication. Blake and Braxton's family have had to hire an attorney. And the last that I was informed, Sherburne County Sheriff Brott hasn't said a word to the family. The only public statement that Sheriff Brott of Sherburne County has made about the trooper-caused accident in Sherburne County just a little over a month ago was to say that the accident was unavoidable. The trooper did everything he could, while he now has his staff investigating that. See, this intersection right here should have been the start of reform for the Minnesota State Patrol. This intersection right here should have been the start for reform in the state of Minnesota for all law enforcement on how they handle these situations. This should have been the beginning. If it needed to have a new beginning, it should have been here. And if this isn't enough, this should have been the case of Braxton and Blake in Sherburne County. But it's not. It's the same old, same old. It's the same business every day, over and over and over again. It's the same thing. We're going to slow walk the investigation. We're going to keep the information from the public. We're going to keep the information from the families. We're not going to tell anybody anything until it's just impossible for us to keep it under our belts. And then the courts are going to step in and they're going to allow it to drag out. We're going to give it time for the heat to die and for the pressure to wane. And once all that's done, then we're going to just quietly brush it under the rug and make it go away, because hopefully we can offer a plea deal to Trooper Shane Roper and he can get on with his life while Olivia remains dead. Trooper Moser can build his defense, and Blake remains paralyzed in bed, having had to had his graduation ceremony alone in his hospital room. While Trooper Moser gets to get drunk and go fishing and hang out with all of his friends, knowing the system is going to do everything it can to protect him. Because all that law enforcement is, maybe it's not the case in your neck of the woods, I don't know, but all that law enforcement in Minnesota does to protect and serve is to protect themselves and serve themselves. They don't give a good goddamn about you. How do we know? Because just a few months after Trooper Shane Roper killed Olivia Flores here in Rochester, another trooper responding to a non-emergency accident got involved in another accident, responding to an accident, or got into an accident responding to a call. And Rochester, Minnesota Police Department investigated it and has never, and this was in September of this last year, Rochester, Minnesota Police Department has not released one bit of information about that accident that trooper was involved in. Folks, I did not want to do this today. I didn't know Olivia. But you know who's not out here today? The media should be camped out doing reports from this intersection all day long. Trooper Shane Roper's face should be on every news outlet, in every newspaper, and every social media site that covers local news, that covers news in the state of Minnesota. Trooper Roper's image should be billboarded. The Minnesota State Patrol's responsibility should be billboarded. News media doesn't even talk about Trooper Shane Roper anymore. The news media isn't talking about Blake and Braxton nearly as much as what the media should be doing, especially with a family that's grieving. So we have to move on to the next sensational story. We have to move on to the next thing that's political. We have to move on to the next thing because we have to feed people's innate desire for juicy details. And this is done. This is over. It's moved on for so many people. I'm not out here because I'm personally invested in Olivia Flores' family. I don't know them. They don't know me. I haven't talked, outside of a very brief interaction outside of the courtroom. I've never talked to them. I've never interviewed them. And I don't blame them for not wanting to talk to me. Why would you want to talk to some complete stranger with a podcast? Totally get it. They're hurting. They're grieving. And the mainstream media has moved on, and the wage slave tax cattle of Minnesota are going to end up being the ones that end up paying the costs for whatever comes of this. And the Minnesota State Patrol and every other law enforcement agency in the state of Minnesota and across the United States will continue to operate the way they always operate. And they will always blame we the people, or find a reason. Yeah. Almost had an accident right there. None of this changes until you guys wake up. None of this changes until all of you begin to hold public servants accountable. Nothing changes. And that's why I'm out here. Everybody else will forget. I'm not going to. I can't. This is where she died. This is where she died. "18 years old. It's an intersection of injustice. We're a two-tier justice system met and protected one of their own until they couldn't protect anymore. This is where Olivia Flores died. And I hope this is the intersection that makes the rest of you wake up and realize it's time for support of law enforcement to die as well. Because behind every story of Olivia Flores that does make it on the front page, that the media does cover for a little bit while it's hot and gossipy, there are thousands of other people being abused by the system and nobody gives a damn about them. And that's why I do what I do. I hope that Trooper Shane Roper lives long enough to be found guilty, and that he's hounded and cursed by this intersection for the rest of his life. Because this is where he murdered Olivia Flores last year, and he still walks free. nobody cares.